That is controversial what you're saying, because we as a society have not chosen whether or not, transitioning without gender dysphoria is something acceptable.
Wait, aren't we liberals? Like, aren't we okay with people doing what they want to do?
Well, I am, but not everyone is.
What is gender ideology?
This idea that, there's
that gender and sex are different, that there's non-binary genders.
Self-identification is...
that you self-identify your gender, that these things are changeable and not, they're not born with these things.
You know this, Doomer. You're just playing dumb, but...
No. I mean, there's a lot of different things you could mean by that. If the idea is that you can choose your gender, then that's just right.
That's not right,
So okay. What gender are you feeling today?
Wait, I can't tell if you're joking or not.
I'm not joking.
No one actually believes, well, no, science actually believes that you can choose your gender. Even the people that want to label gender as like the social element of it, no one's choosing that.
Wait, what? That's exactly what the argument is.
No, the argument is that society is basically foisting these ideas onto people culturally. You're not choosing to be, to have society foist things upon you.
I mean, gender is a result of personal expression. You choose what you express, so you choose what gender you express.
No, now you have, that's a completely different, you have your own definition of gender. That's not either of the APA's definition of gender, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, is the APA the ultimate? I mean, this is what I hear in every single discussion of gender from like everyone. I didn't realize this was a controversial position at all.
Yeah, but those people are wrong.
What everyone means. Okay, well then, what do you think gender means?
Well, here's the problem. There's two different APAs, and they have two different definitions. One, which is the colloquial definition, which I would argue is how most people think of it, which is that they say that sex literally just means your sexual organs, and gender basically means everything else associated with sex. So anything that's denoted as being masculine or feminine is part of your gender. But under that definition, that includes a shit ton of things that are obviously biological. That's the psychiatric association definition. The psychological association definition is that anything that's biological should be classified as sex, and anything that's social should be classified as gender. But even under that, they're not saying that people individually choose their gender. They're saying these are the social things that are foisted upon you by society.
I mean, if someone is trans and like they grow up basically being taught, implicitly to behave as the sex they were assigned at birth, and they choose to express, the other, how is that not a choice? I don't understand. Like that,
because
there's this thing called gender dysphoria. Have you heard of it?
I mean, sure, but that's still a choice. I mean, you're gonna have an you're gonna have an impulse.
Wait. To be clear, you mean the action, not the feeling, is the choice, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, but but that's part of the problem.
Treatment is the choice. Is that what we're saying? We're saying whether or not to treat your gender dysphoria is the choice.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. But the problem is that it shouldn't actually be called gender dysphoria, because it doesn't even make sense. It's really sex dysphoria. Because if it was gender dysphoria, you wouldn't change your body at all. Yeah. Technically.
Well, there's body things that are associated with gender.
No, but but this is the problem. So when we talk about gender dysphoria, we're using the term gender dysphoria is created by the American Psychiatric Association. The American Psychiatric Association doesn't use the everything that is social as gender definition. So when they say gender dysphoria, it makes sense. But if you're using the gender means social things, then the term doesn't make sense. You understand?
I mean, like the people you're arguing against none of them would take the base of this being the APA's definition.
Yeah, but so they're just drawing something out of their ass, though. That's the problem. They're just making something up.
And they want to teach it to your kids. The shit that they just made up.
I mean, there hasn't been any evidence, to my knowledge, that there is a clear distinction between sex and gender that can be teased out at all.
I mean, isn't the only piece of evidence you would need a single trans person?
No, because they have a biological condition.
Gender dysphoria is a condition.
Right.
Well, but Doomer, are you do you subscribe to the idea that people can transition without gender dysphoria, so they're just doing it because it is a choice?
Well, people clearly can.
Right.
I mean,
do you support
you
that?
would only need one example. Do I support what? Like, do I
Well,
think it's a
most
good
people-
idea, or do I think
most-
it's possible?
Most people don't get chemotherapy unless they have cancer. So
I mean, the basic idea is that you can feel like you would be happier as the other gender without, like, you would be fine staying as you are, but you would be happier as the other gender. Do I think there's a non-zero number of people that fit that criteria? Yeah, probably. But I mean, I think that the number gets exaggerated. I mean, the number, like, if you were to look at trans people as a group, I would expect dysphoria to be like pretty close to 100%. At least I've never personally met someone that only experiences euphoria and doesn't have dysphoria.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like a fringe thing, but does it exist? Yeah, it probably does. I mean, lots of things exist.
well,
I mean, is it like a controversial claim?
a lot of people are concerned because they think a lot of people are transitioning without gender dysphoria. That's the concern. So, but there are plenty of people on the left, probably Vaush here, who calls himself a gender abolitionist, that thinks that's fine. You should be able to transition without gender dysphoria.
Well, I mean, by that's fine. Do you mean the government shouldn't stop you or something, or like people shouldn't think you're a
lot
freak?
A lot of people
Both.
have a lot of people have a problem with people going into classrooms and telling young children that if you might be in the wrong body and that you should consult your personal intuitions and let us know if you think you might be the wrong sex.
So this is why I asked, because I wasn't sure exactly what you mean. Because if quote unquote gender ideology is just saying the things I've been supporting, then as far as I'm concerned, it's non-controversial. It's way different than going into a second grade classroom and like basically poking people and trying to get them to like reject their own gender identity.
Well, those
are very different things.
In their own minds, though, they're not poking them. In their own minds, they're saying, look, there's a number of people in this room right now who were born in the wrong body, and I need to find out who they are. They're caught up in a cult. I mean, I don't know how better to describe it. Like, why
I
would you go?
I don't disagree with that, but the thing is, you're conflating the idea of just telling people like, if you are raised as a boy, you can be a girl if you want to. You seem to be saying that that's also gender ideology. At least that's how it came across to me.
Well, but that is controversial what you're saying, because we as a society have not chosen whether or not, transitioning without gender dysphoria is something acceptable.
Well, I mean, wait, aren't we liberals? Like, aren't we okay with people doing what they want to do?
Well, I am, but not everyone is. Not everyone is okay with that. And I mean, I'm more and more, Sitch has kind of won me over to this. Maybe people shouldn't be transitioning without gender dysphoria. I'm with you. Mm-hmm. I'm like, let people do what they want. But so many of these cases, I don't think the people really are getting informed consent.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm just kind of curious as to what you mean, because if you're asking me like, do I think it is abstractly a good thing to go through the transition process if you don't have dysphoria? I would guess that on average that would have a bad impact on people's lives because of how difficult it is, because of all the difficulties associated with transitioning. I mean,
sure,
I would agree with that, but that doesn't. But hold on, when you say that, it's going to come across to people as like the government should stop people from transitioning without like a diagnosis of dysphoria, which is a very different thing. Like, you're going to get nailed by somebody arguing with you, making statements like that, because they're going to think that you're like into conversion therapy or something, or like,
they're
way more extreme than you actually
that has nothing to do with conversion therapy at all. You're saying
I'm saying, okay, my point was that they're going to think that your views are that extreme, not that you're supporting exactly.
I don't think people should be allowed to get transition surgery if they don't have gender dysphoria.
Really?
Yeah, that's
always been my
literally
position.
That's literally Sitch's position. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
I don't think people should be able to get
Vaush,
radical medical treatments that they don't need that causes their body physical harm.
Remember what started this whole talk?
Wait, hold on.
Remember what started this whole talk? Vaush is putting Sitch in the 5% that want to see the death to all trans people.
No, because if you have gender dysphoria, that's fine. I'm
Okay,
saying for if you don't have gender dysphoria.
What happens if you grow up in Alabama and the doctors refuse to diagnose people with gender dysphoria?
Well, that's a completely different situation. Then the doctor's not doing their duty.
But I mean, this is why we construct rules the way that we do. The reason I'm against the death penalty isn't that I think it's
Then
wrong to kill someone.
first of all,
It's because the
Okay.
government will, the government can't be trusted to make that decision.
That's a silly question.
Of course it is.
How?
Because you should go to a doctor, or really you should go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist that does honestly and truthfully do their best to determine whether people have gender dysphoria or not.
But that's what I'm
That's
saying.
the answer. You don't just make a blanket like, well, then anyone can
We
do it
can't-
because
you
some
can't ensure that
place
that's
they
gonna-
won't do it.
What I'm saying is that you can't ensure that that's going to happen everywhere in the country. I mean,
Of course
again,
you can.
no, you absolutely can't. There's definitely going to be areas where, at the very least, doctors are very, very unlikely or unwilling, generally speaking, to diagnose.
There's going to be areas
And, like,
where
I
they
tried-
get half
wait,
their
wait, wait,
patients are false positives too, Doomer.
Wait.
I understand that.
Wait. If there's a hypothetical part of the country where doctors are unwilling to diagnose people with gender dysphoria, then the conversation is moot because they're not going to give people those surgeries regardless of whether the government says they should do it or not.
Well, okay, that's not true, because if we are not implementing your law where, like, you're allowed to do it regardless of what the doctor says, you aren't handicapped by a diagnosis to get the treatment, then you can choose to get the treatment anyway.
No, but how are we existing in a hypothetical part of the country where there are surgeons that will perform the surgery, but there aren't doctors that will give you the diagnosis? This seems very ridiculous.
I mean, they could hypothetically go somewhere else to get the surgery. I don't know how it is now.
Go somewhere else to get a fucking doctor talking to them. It's the fucking internet. You could talk to a doctor over Zoom. I don't think this is a good argument.
I mean, I don't. It's a weird argument from a liberal to be like, you shouldn't be allowed to, get an elective surgery. It just seems odd. I mean,
would it be okay to walk into the class?
Wait. Do you think all drugs should be legal?
Yeah, I was going to say, is it okay for them to walk into a classroom and say, certain of you kids are going to end up crack addicts, so I just want you to talk to me first?
Yeah, I don't. There's something to do with liberal societies have had restrictions like this forever.
I mean, if someone wants to do this, that's basically evidence to me that, like, it's a pretty serious state of affairs. I don't know.
I completely disagree with you.
Should people who want to kill themselves kill themselves?
I mean, I legitimately can't respond to that question.
Maybe
because of
it
YouTube
depends on the
TOS.
circumstances.
It's not something we should be discussing.
Right.
Well, it's not much different than, I mean, you brought it up. The root of the question is, should people be able to harm themselves if they feel so inclined? Because you yourself said that you think many of the people transitioning probably are harming themselves.
Well, I don't think it's in my position to, like, make their decision for them, though. I mean, like, I think people are harming themselves when they go see fucking Marvel movies. I mean, I disagree with almost all of the decisions that people make in their personal lives.
God.
Nearly all of them. But that doesn't mean that I think Marvel movies should be banned, or that, like, people shouldn't be allowed to transition, or whatever the fuck.
A difference between saying, Marvel movies may hurt you, or more, less jokey. Going to the Cheesecake Factory, eating cheesecake might, harm your cholesterol or whatever. Then between that and saying, like, oh, well, anyone should be able to walk into the opium store and buy as much opium as they want. Right?
I mean,
these are very different things.
Sitch and I have different opinions on that, but
okay, but if you're in favor of that, then fine. I'm not in favor of that.
Adults should be able to get opium. Come on, Sitch.
No,
quit being a ball buster.
I completely disagree.
What's different than opium and just beer?
But it's very different.
Oh, okay.
I mean, first of all, opium's way more addictive and way more damaging to your health
than
beer.
alcohol. Alcohol's pretty addictive.
What a square.
Not even close. I don't think it's even remotely close to opium.
Anyway, let's finish this video off. Doomer.
Well, wait. We did.
Do you want to extract an answer out of Doomer? He seems like he's
an answer about what?
Oh no! Wait, I just want to answer one thing. You said, "What is gender identity?" And then Adam said, "It's telling like a boy they can grow up to be a girl, or no, you said that was the example you gave, Doomer, and you said, is that gender ideology? And I'd say that's only gender ideology if you say any boy can decide to be a girl, and you remove the whole medical
gender
aspect of gender
dysphoria.
dysphoria. Then yes, I would say that's gender ideology, and that's bad and should not be taught.
Look at Sitch. He always wants to make things clear. But this is exactly what people are doing in the classroom. They don't even bring up gender dysphoria.
Right.
Okay. My whole like point was that what you were saying could be taken as being a bit more extreme than what I thought you meant. Is because like telling people that like they're allowed to be trans, to me, is not only is that not gender ideology or something, that's just like obviously something that kids should know. That seems totally non-controversial, but that's very different.
That you're allowed to be trans?
Yeah, that if you're trans, that's fine.
If you're trans,
well, that's
if you have gender
thing.
dysphoria,
Yeah, sure.
that's fine though. But the problem with gender dysphoria though is it's kind of the equivalent of the grade school teacher going in and saying, you know, some of you in here may have cancer, and how we determine if you have cancer or not is if you feel like you have this. Like there's no objective measure of whether someone has gender dysphoria. So why would you do that? Why would you have a teacher walk into a classroom and say, some of you might have cancer, let me know if you feel like you have cancer?
Right. You're gonna have a bunch of false
a bunch of kids are gonna go, I feel like I have cancer. Oh my God,
Right.
cancer, I might have it.
Okay, wait. The reason that you would do that is because our society was very, very hostile to these people not too long ago. Okay,
Right.
so there is a pretty decent reason to say these things. And like it is true that like there are going to be a number of false positives, and a lot of kids are going to.
That's a terrible argument.
No, it's really not.
Look, we've changed. Our society has gone from being unaccepting of them to literally celebrating them overnight, to the point where, you know, people are getting I'm trans birthday parties. Like we've jumped like the shark here in extremity.
You're pushing me to defend some stuff, okay? The reason people are overly celebratory about that is because there are lots of people that feel the exact opposite.
What do you think
there are lots of people that
false
treat trans people
though?
like freaks?
What do you think causes false positives though?
What do you mean?
Look, false positives are created by the celebratory atmosphere towards this is non-controversial. So many of the detransitioning videos on YouTube are people saying, listen, I was an outcast. I had no friends as soon as I started telling people I was trans. Now all of a sudden I had a peer group.
We're going down a different path. So you asked why is it that people like why would a school teacher mention this at all? Why would they ever hear this? Again, there's a good reason for that, because it's pretty likely that in the kid's life they've heard, like, at least this was true 5 years ago. It is very, very likely that they would have heard nothing but extremely negative things about this. And if they did have those feelings, they would internalize them, and it could cause very serious problems. So like, again, that's probably still true in a lot of the country.
No, I completely disagree, but
that like people are broadly speaking not accepting of trans people, and that like lots of people are vocal and vociferous about their dislike of them.
You have to do the math. You have to say, listen, okay, sure, society was unaccepting of trans people, and obviously there are this limited number of people that have gender dysphoria that we have to be conscious of. But now we're going to risk false positives in every single classroom in America to deal with the problem of this tiny minority? That seems crazy.
Okay, well, there's a risk in both directions, but we know that if you don't do that, there's going to be a cost. And again, do we have a number on false positives? Like, wouldn't it be the case if someone like again, I
mean, the cancer example. The cancer example is perfect, because if you did my thought experiment in every single classroom in America, the cancer rates would be through the roof, and you know it.
You can't. I mean, okay. First of all, if someone, let's say that someone does not have whatever the true root of being trans is. Like, I'm not even talking about dysphoria. Let's say they don't have dysphoria, but let's say they don't have that or euphoria. Let's say that there's no real, not real, there's no like psychic basis for it. The only reason that they feel attracted to that is because people were talking about it, and like their friends like it, and it seems cool. Let's say that this person exists.
Yeah,
Don't you think that this is don't you think that this is the least likely person to actually go through and get surgery to transition?
No. What?
Why?
Of course not. Because this is a problem. You have all these kids that are going through puberty who are starting to feel uncomfortable and weird about their body. And then they get confused because they think, oh, well, the reason I feel uncomfortable or weird about my body is because I have gender dysphoria.
Yeah, totally.
So they start
it's like
taking
normal puberty.
Right. So they start taking blockers, which maybe makes them feel better because now they don't have the hormones affecting their brains anymore. Or they start taking, especially if they're girls, start taking testosterone, which I believe elevates your mood naturally anyway. So they're like, oh, I guess I do have gender dysphoria.
Yeah. Also, once they've made declarations on social media, you should really look into
Well, yeah, they get all this praise. Yeah.
Right. It's called the consistency principle, or the consistency bias. They used to do this basically to Korean soldiers, like or prisoners of war in the Korean War. They would make them write out like anti-American sentiment, and pretty soon they were like turning. As soon as people start making written declarations, especially when there's a social component to it, there's no going back.
That seems pretty weird to me. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, that doesn't jive with my intuition.
Okay. There's the consistency bias you could look into. There's a bunch of research on it. There's also
but there's
the social contagion
it's not,
was as well studied before any of this trans stuff even became a thing.
But I mean, it's not adequate to say that there's, again, you're saying that there's a psychic force in a certain direction. Like, obviously there is. But what I'm saying is that doesn't justify the idea that, like, okay, now they're past like the fucking trans event horizon and they're just being sucked into gender reassignment surgery and there's no possible going back, right? And light can't escape, and it's just it's just a fucking ticking clock matter of time, until they get fucking crushed into a singular. Like, that doesn't imply that, right? Like, well, there's psychic forces in lots of directions.
Who is going to get sucked in and who is going to escape? The people who have stronger forces of personality to turn around.
The people who are most likely to get sucked in are the people who have really fucking strong gender dysphoria, and like transitioning and getting like facial surgery and stuff. That's not just what I hope. That's the logical thing to believe.
Tell me the logic about how they determine what gender dysphoria is. To explain that logic to me.
I mean, what do you mean? How's that relevant?
It is relevant. You're basically saying that people who have really bad gender dysphoria are the people who are not going to turn around. How is that determined?
Well, I mean, those people are pretty likely to like go seek treatment, and the psychologist is like, so you want to kill yourself? Why is that? And they're like, well, I don't think I'm a guy. That's like, oh, that kind of sounds like gender dysphoria. Like, I don't know. Like, like, what do you want me to say?
No, but wait. This is the problem. Is that someone says, "Oh, I am depressed," and you say, "What?" Like someone figuring out why they're depressed. Like, it's not so simple. Just say why, and then they say, "Oh, well, it's very obvious because I'm, male or female or whatever."
Yeah, it's
like
not obvious at all.
Yeah, for some people that could be very obvious, and for other people it could be not even remotely obvious.
Well, okay. You asked me like to find a circumstance where it would be fair to like diagnose someone with gender dysphoria. I'm like, well, I'm sure there's lots of really obvious cases, and I'm sure there's lots of cases where it's less subtle. But like, I don't really know what we're getting at. Do I need to like discreetly lay out exactly how it should be diagnosed?
What I'm getting at is when we know when someone has cancer because we take a fucking biopsy and we look under the microscope and we know what the cancer cells look like. Okay, it's very clear cut. With gender dysphoria, it is not clear cut at all. It's all self-report. And if you know anything about psychology, I don't know how much you know about psychology. Self-report is ridiculously unreliable in all manners of diagnosis.
Okay, but I mean that's true. But then I mean you're basically throwing out the whole of like psychology and psychiatry and like treating people, because that, like, what you're saying, there's a lot of ambiguity and people don't know themselves and things get misreported and self-reports are unreliable. That's true of everything in psychology.
Yes, the difference is
Well, wait. That is true, and that's often why in psychology the correlations are so much weaker than like in physics or something. But that's supposed to be the role of the psychologist slash psychiatrist, is to be able to tease this out of people.
Right. And
And it
also,
seems like there's been a part of the problem with sort of the affirmed consent or informed consent model for gender dysphoria is that the teasing out of trying to figure out whether someone actually has gender dysphoria or not is often lost, and it's just this, oh, if you say you have gender dysphoria, then you do. You just have to
Okay, well
say,
that's a
check
different that's a different conversation. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not-
understand. That's not what
I haven't
exactly
made
what
an
we're
argument
talking
about that.
Right,
I
understand.
I'm making the argument that like gender dysphoria is a thing that exists, and people who have gender dysphoria are going to be much more likely to go through the full process of like going through therapy and getting surgery.
Yeah, I mean,
which seems really
I don't-
obvious to me.
Yeah,
I don't know
that,
why.
I don't think we disagree with it.
Doomer, why? The thing that's confusing for me is that you have such evidently strong opinions on this based off of your intuition that the false positives aren't off the charts. What makes you what makes you so sure that there
Well,
aren't?
okay, first of all, you can have the position while thinking there's false positives. So that's not implied.
Sure, okay.
But I haven't
you
seen-
did do
I haven't
the
seen- I haven't
calculation
seen-
between the number of people who have
Listen.
legitimate gender dysphoria
Listen,
and the
Doomer
false
has
positives.
retreated back to a very specific position, Adam.
Okay, what is
I'm
the
not
position?
retreating. That's what I've been telling you about the whole time.
What is the
We're retreating.
retreat?
Oh, I'm gonna fucking build a straw man. If you don't follow me down the road, you're fucking retreating back to your real position.
He told us the position.
How
His
much-
position?
It's
His
like
position was that that people that actually have gender dysphoria would be far more likely to end up in the process of transitioning than someone who doesn't.
right, but the false positives he kind of punted on, and he did separate out. He said, "Listen, you have to do the math. You have to say how many."
Okay, first of all, if you want to make the false positive argument, you would need some reason to make it outside of just saying there are some number of false positives. Because again, there are harms both ways. There are harms if you
Yeah,
restrict
but
care,
I have
and there
the
are harms
reason
if-
to make it.
Hold on,
There has
hold on.
been a great literature on social contagion.
That doesn't mean that there's false positives in this case that are leading people to like transition, get surgery,
Right.
and fuck their lives up.
No,
That's not implied.
Yeah, it would. Well, it would have to be. You'd have to rely on the fact that the number has just exploded
Yeah,
dramatically.
it's up like
and that
10,000%.
it's exploded in a way that seems to counter what would be thought of, which is that it's exploding among young girls specifically, more so than boys.
I mean, like
When before it was inverted.
it seems like it seems like the basically what's going on here is you're saying, well, there's a problem of some people are getting overdiagnosed, and that's leading to an issue. And it's like, well, yeah, I think basically anybody would agree with that to some extent. The question is, what is the bigger harm? Is
Yes,
it
that's
that
what
people are being
I'm-
overdiagnosed, or is it that people that were being underdiagnosed
Mhm.
would have gone through trouble as well? And the problem is that the facts don't support either of those.
Yes.
Because it could very easily be the case that the reason that it is exploded by 1,000% or whatever is because people were being underdiagnosed, because society wasn't accepting of this, and the increase of acceptance has allowed people to express their true selves and has
Right.
allowed people to do something that is improving their lives. I mean, you can't say which of those is the correct state of affairs.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Well,
And
like
we're
you
kind of
can look at
flying
the
by the seat
numbers
of our
though.
pants here,
Look how many people have
we can
gender
move on.
dysphoria.
We can move on.
Well, it seems like there is. I mean, it's a number. I just want to get this straight. You're weighing the number of potential false positives to the number of people you would not do anything about that legitimately have gender dysphoria. And the gender dysphoria people are like 0.001% of the population. Is that the case?
Okay. On a base level, I think people should be allowed to do things to themselves that are bad for themselves.
Before they're 18.
I mean, do you mean hormone blockers or like surgery?
Sure, yeah. Hormone blockers, puberty blockers.
Well, I mean, I don't think those cause
you have
harm.
to take that before 18, like definitionally, right? But
Of course.
I mean, like I don't know. I haven't really thought about like at what age should people be allowed to get gender affirming surgery. Like I probably would say above 18. I haven't really thought about it.
okay,
But
Well,
like,
that takes hormone blockers off the table. Then we don't even have to talk about it.
No, hormone blockers are different than getting surgery. Hormone
No, but I
blockers,
mean,
as far as I understand,
You
wouldn't
are
take
not
hormone
in favor.
blockers after 18. It wouldn't make sense. I would assume
Yeah.
it would make sense. I mean, I guess some people do for specific
well,
medical
that's what I'm saying.
reasons,
Surgery is different than taking puberty blockers.
Right.
I mean, like I'm almost certainly in favor of people being allowed to take puberty blockers. I don't know at what point.
Oh, okay. Well, then that'd have to be before 18, though.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's
Okay.
distinct from surgery. But I
Well,
don't
you
think
said gender. Oh, you said gender affirming surgery. I thought you meant gender
Yeah.
affirming care. Okay.
No, like taking
Gotcha.
puberty blockers, as far as I understand, does not cause a permanent issue.
Well, it can actually, but
I mean, in what percentage of people?
well,
Again, what's the harm? Like,
well, this is
again,
this is
there's always
I'll tell you.
always a sure.
This is the reason why, and when we were talking to Jesse Signal about this, this is a reason why all these European countries, actually, I think most of them, are now they're not prescribing puberty blockers to kids anymore. Especially all the Nordic countries. I think the UK now is looking to revise their things because it does cause actually all this damage. A lot of it has been focused on, for women, it's been focused on osteoporosis, but they're now seeing that there's all these brain problems from hormone blockers that then cause increases in depression, anxiety, all this other stuff that goes on forward, because when you go through puberty, you're putting all these chemicals that are changing the way your brain functions. And it's silly to think that you can just block that for your whole life and be fine.
I mean, I would need to see the level of
Okay.
care.
Right,
I mean,
I
again, even if we know that they're quite dangerous, I'd still think it would probably be fine for some number of people. It's just that the diagnostic criteria would be different.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, this all could be fine. Like if you could put kids in the brain scan and it said you have gender dysphoria, okay, like they knew exactly where in the brain to look and what caused it and all this stuff. I mean, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Yeah, it would be unnecessary.
Yeah, because you just say, okay, well, if they have it, then they have it, and
Yeah.
you do what you do. So, anyways,
All right, we're almost
editing
done.
note, CT, you can.
No, leave it in. It's great.
Oh no, I was gonna say make this a separate video,
Oh, really?
so
Oh,
we can
maybe.
really stretch out the content. We'll have
Okay.
just the Vaush video, and then we'll
Us
have the
arguing about gender. Okay.
can-
transgender
you
Doomer
can-
video.
You can have a clickbait title like "Doomer Mask Off, Pro Vaush Socialist" or something. And
There
then
you go.
You can go check your comment section. You can see what right wingers think about
Do
trans
we,
people. That'll be
Doomer?
great.
I got nothing against trans people, and I think obviously there are people in the world that are better off transitioning. I don't like the whole idea that kids aren't going to fall into some trap. Like we're asking 5-year-olds if you think you're transgender, like moving forward based on their responses. That's so weak.
I was just trying to say that like some of the words that you're using are going to make people think that your position is a good deal more extreme than it actually is. That was my main point.
Look, those people, their whole goal in life is to make any reasonable position seem extreme, because they are the fucking extremists. Okay, that's their whole game plan. This is Vaush 101.
But I'm not just talking about like Vaush. I mean, talking about like reasonable people. I mean, like if I turned on a stream and I heard someone raging about gender ideology, I would be pretty against them immediately.
Yeah, but I guess you're perceiving gender ideology just so different than we are.
How do we have this conversation?
But no,
what do you
wait,
want to call it?
Wait. But I'm glad, because Doomer is correct. When we say gender ideology, we should exactly say what that means, so not to cause confusion.
Well, that's the thing, Adam, is that you're using the exact same terms as people who are way more extreme than you. And
what is a better term?
Well, when they say
I don't
gender
know
ideology,
exactly.
what do you think they're like? What are they talking about?
I mean, like when I hear someone say like gender ideology, like they're trying to push gender ideology on our kids, I think that's people that like are basically anti-trans. That don't think trans people should exist.
Hold on.
Don't think like
Ron DeSantis, the leading Republican candidate for president of the United States, uses the term gender ideology, and you're making it sound like it's a fucking Nazi dog whistle. Okay. I think where you're coming from, Doomer, seems a little in the leftist
I'm not
bubble.
telling you. Okay, I'm not telling you what is right or wrong. I'm telling you how people are going to perceive what you're saying.
Yes,
and people absolutely do perceive it that way.
Yes, leftist, communist, woke bubble
based.
people do perceive it that way. I agree. When I say woke, they perceive that as a Nazi dog whistle too. I mean, how are we supposed to have this
Woke
conversation if we can't use the same terminology that the leading presidential candidate is using?
Okay, well, can I Google what exactly Ron DeSantis means by gender ideology? Do you
Sure,
know?
Sure,
look
if you
it
can
up.
find it.
Please
I mean-
add it to this. Yeah, I'm
When-
dying
when
to hear
I-
it.
When I hear the term gender ideology, I generally think of something like James Lindsay saying the phrase. I don't
Yeah.
I've never heard him say it the way
And
that you're
Doomer's here
defining it,
talking like we've
I didn't say the entire reason that I brought it up is because I don't think you have those views.
Yes.
And people are going to confuse that. That's the entire reason.
Right, I understand.
Anything.
Well, if
listen,
there's a better
don't take
terminology
it-
that
listen.
I can use, then I mean, I will use it.
We don't have to take it personally. I appreciate what you're trying to do to him. I'm just surprised that this is your view of gender ideology. You could be right, and I could be completely misreading the situation. But this is so outside of my experience.
Do an experiment for me, okay?
Yes.
Go talk to Destiny and slam gender ideology and see what happens.
Destiny is in the fucking bubble too. I don't
Yeah.
get what the fuck.
Destiny is like, okay, who's
We
not
just
in the bubble?
earlier we just had a
Us.
Who's
conversation.
not in the bubble?
Us.
We just
Oh,
had a
you. Okay,
conversation
that's it.
about how Destiny thinks he's the conservative whisperer, and you're telling me that he thinks the term gender ideology is like a Nazi dog whistle.
Just DM him. He responds to DMs in like a couple hours.
I'm not gonna DM him some stupid thing like this, okay? I don't. First of all, I
Settle
don't
an argument
care.
between us and Doomer, Destiny.
I don't care.
It's not about an argument.
It's
between
more.
us.
It's more important that you are going to hear Republicans saying gender ideology like crazy in the midterm elections. You're going to hear them saying it in
hold
the
on.
presidential election.
Yes. Okay.
Gender ideology is not exactly the N
wait.
word here.
Okay. Wait.
But it could be.
First of all, there can be a massive disconnect between what you're saying and what you actually mean. So, like, this is why. What was it called? Defund the police was such a bad fucking slogan, because like the people saying it didn't actually mean defund the police. So there can be a massive, and like it's very obvious what people are going to think when you say defund the police, right? So basically you're saying, oh, well, when they say gender ideology, they don't mean what you think. It's like, well, that doesn't fucking matter what it actually means. It matters what you're saying communicates to people.
Gender ideology has to do with self-identification.
But again, when you call it an ideology, it is like,
it is an ideology.
The default thought when you say gender ideology as a pejorative is the idea that like it's a bad thing to respect people's pronouns, or it's a bad thing to acknowledge that trans people might exist, or like any of these things would be the default assumption.
That's not how
That's a straw man.
My default assumption.
That's a straw man Vaush
okay.
version of it. Yeah.
It's not possible for this to be a straw man.
Yeah.
Because we're not
It's
talking
just-
about.
Right.
Yeah, I'm talking about people's perceptions.
Right.
This has nothing to do with what people's arguments actually even are.
It is
What I'm
a
saying is
straw
that, like,
man because it's basically framing
No.
gender
Adam, it's not
ideology
possible for
as
it to be
this.
It's not even possible for it to
It's
be a
not a
straw
straw man because he's just saying that when like if I say the color, if I say blue, you think of what that word means.
Right.
You're not straw manning my version of blue. So he's just saying that like if we say gender ideology, Doomer's perception is that most people view gender ideology as meaning, that you accept that trans people exist. Okay, that's not my. Now that is completely different than my expectation or experience of what people mean when they say gender ideology, and I don't know which one of us is correct.
It is.
I'm okay.
It is framing the argument
here's-
that people are making, and it's turning the thing into something that is not. I mean, I don't. What would you call that?
No, but that's
Okay,
that's
here's what I'm
irrelevant
saying.
though.
If you had a different way to express this, it would be more effective. You would be more clear with people, because you can tell me it's very unreasonable for me to have that position. It doesn't really matter how unreasonable it is. I'm telling you that lots of people will perceive it that way. And
Right.
you would be more effective at communicating if you found a different way to express that.
Well, I
That's
guess
all
I
I'm
have to. I don't know what we had to come up with some phrase. I don't know what the phrase would be, but
And like the
And
thing
gender
is,
ideology is the one that everybody's using. I mean, I'm not.
well, okay,
I
but
haven't.
everyone's using it, but they're using it differently. Again, like Republicans are going to use it in a certain way, and like, is it not shocking to you that there are terms that politicians use that are perceived radically differently by? The
Well, I
people in their
understand what
bubble
you're
and the
saying
people
by
outside their bubble.
defund the police. People have different responses to. I get that.
I'll do a Twitter poll. This will be the most correct way, Doomer, to figure this out. What does gender ideology mean? Okay, and then we'll get to the bottom.
Did you just
the
not look it
Twitter
up? I mean,
poll.
I looked up gender ideology, but there's a bunch of conflicting stuff on here. The study of gender ideology is concerned with describing and explaining cross-cultural similarities and differences in human views on
That has nothing to do
women,
with what we're
men,
talking
and
about.
alternative gender identities.
Right.
Yeah, so like
So-
again, that's a lot of people are going to think that's the definition, and that is
Well,
not.
no, I don't think anyone's going to think that, because that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That's from like 2001. That's talking about something very specific.
Science Direct.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
What is an example of gender ideology? According to a traditional gender ideology about the family, for example, men fulfill their family roles through instrumental breadwinning activities, and women fulfill their roles through
These are
nutrient
just a bunch
homemaking,
of different.
right? So
these are a bunch of,
that's the conservative gender ideology.
right, or like another definition of gender ideology in this page that you're looking at is just like for people to basically to collectivize themselves from intersectionality and look at like, all women have the same problems and conflicts and they should unify as like a social group, which is not what we talk about. So there's like a million definitions.
So really quickly, I'd like to point something out. So when the term gender ideology is used by like Ron DeSantis, for example, he's signaling to his base. There should be no objection to that. The point of that is to communicate something to his base, right?
Yes.
Now, earlier you agreed that a lot of his base genuinely kind of fucking hate trans people, whether that's 20% or 30%. I mean, like,
I never agreed to that. I never agreed
you absolutely
to that.
Did. CT, insert the clip. Clip it in.
What?
Yes, we did.
30% of.
I said it could be 20%. It could be 30%. But there's some number of people
hate trans people. Look,
yeah,
we went over this. They
hate
are
the
concerned.
Sin, love the sinner. Is that
they're concerned that these people are hurting themselves. They don't fucking hate them. Okay, they're trying to
wait. No, we were distinguishing between those two different groups. But you acknowledge that there is a group of people that just kind of are.
Yeah, but we never. I didn't say it was. I didn't say it was 30%. I mean, maybe it's 5%. I'm not like I don't know.
I'll agree to the 20%, 30%. If Adam wants to go 5, it's fine.
But listen,
it's higher than
when
5.
Ron
my point
Ron DeSantis is also communicating to parents who have their children in schools that are worried some fucking dumbass leftist is going to show up in their kid's classroom and tell Billy that he was born in the wrong body.
Yes, that's the most extreme version. Basically, everybody would agree is wrong. Just telling someone who isn't expressing dysphoria that like
no. When I say gender ideology, I mean the people that want the dumbass grade school teacher to come in and do a class on how everyone in the class could have been born in the wrong body.
And that's what I'm saying is that this is not. You need a different word for that because that's not what.
That's not gender ideology.
Listen. I hate to say it. I think I agree with Doomer. We just need we need to be very specific.
No, if the term
what we're talking about,
if the term is not useful, right. I agree. I totally agree. But
because it doesn't matter what we mean by it. It doesn't even matter what people on the right mean by it. What matters is that people on the left just all are strawmanning gender ideology to
now it's a straw man. I just said it was a straw man.
Well, I know that's why.
And you told me it was impossible. It could be a straw man.
I know. I'm trying to build a bridge here.
Okay.
Like for example, well, they're not strawmanning the term. They're strawmanning what's being advocated.
Exactly.
For, to be specifically. But wait a minute. So like one of the things when I Google gender ideology is a paper that says gender ideology, a discourse that threatens gender equality.
Yes.
And it says no, because it's the opposite way you think. Because the definition says gender ideology is a concept adopted by a global movement to articulate opposition to gender equality, abortion, sexual education, and LGBT rights.
That's
in areas
the straw
such as
man.
Marriage, adoption, surrogacy. Well, the term isn't the straw man, but but what is being argued for
is the straw man. That's exactly what I mean.
Right. So if the term is if the gender ideology term is so vague and broad that people are using it vastly differently, then it is becoming useless.
Yes, I agree. I don't like using woke for the same reason.
Adam, you are strawmanning yourself. My whole point is that when you say this, you think you're communicating one thing, but you could very easily be communicating something very fucking different. And then because you are very poorly communicating, you're going to say people are strawmanning you, but they're not. You just fucked up your communication.
Hey,
you use something that would very, very likely cause them to have the wrong idea about what you believe. So you should use a different term.
Adam's law is 99% of political talking points are straw man arguments of the other side. This is exactly what it is. One person hears gender ideology and they hear the straw man version of the argument, and one man hears gender ideology and they hear the Steelman version of the argument. And those two things
Adam,
are completely divergent.
This is a very, very simple thing. If what I want is for some police funding to be redirected to social services, isn't it still my fault if I say defund the police and the people on the other side of the political aisle think that I mean defund the police?
Yes.
Isn't that my fault?
Wait a second here.
Yes.
The difference between defund the police, which is a statement of fact, and gender ideology, which could mean any fucking thing we want to put it to mean. Like, it literally was, non-offensive at one point, and then a bunch of activists went in and turned it into an offensive term. Defund the police starts off offensive. It's just offensive on its face.
But that doesn't matter. The point is, if you say something with
No,
where you know when you
The
say
point
it, you're very
is-
likely to be misunderstood.
Look,
it's
before
incumbent
this
on you to not do that.
Look, gender ideology is not as clearly caustic as defund the police. Before you showed up on this live stream, I had no idea anybody had a problem with it.
First of all, I'm not equivocating them. You use extreme examples to make it very clear that if you say something with the knowledge that what you're saying is going to be misunderstood, that's your responsibility. That's the point of the example.
How many times? Doomer, how many times do I have to?
It's not to say that defund the police is equally bad as gender ideology. I don't think it is.
Okay,
but by using
good.
the defund the police example, it's made very clear that if you say something that is likely to be misunderstood, that it's likely to lead other people to believe something about your beliefs that are inaccurate, that is your responsibility.
Before this conversation, I would have never known that. So thank you, Doomer. I would like to thank you for coming on the show today and spurging out for us. So now we know people get upset when people use the term gender ideology. We will find a different term because you know what? We believe in being precise in your speech. So we're gonna do that. We're on a mission. I think defund the gender ideologist. Well, I'm leaning towards that. How about you, Doomer? You think that would work?
Saying that you don't like wokeness would be a lot better because it's more specific and more people are going to understand what you mean.
Wokeness is more. If you use the term woke, people call you a fucking Nazi. Woke people think woke is the Nazi dog whistle. Woke is gone too. You can't say.
I don't think so.
Okay.
For how many people?
Doomer, all you were doing is you're going, let me think. What does my gut think about this?
Michael Tracy, who I like some things he says and I hate other things he says. He has a good definition of gender ideology.
Okay, good. Let's hear it.
Which he grabbed from trans women. So there you go. You know it's valid. It says, it's namely the abolition of all social constructs around sex and gender, because those constructs are now thought to have been generated by power disparities and other sources of intersectional oppression.
Wow, that sounds like something we should be teaching to grade school kids.
So I guess the short would be gender ideology is the abolition of all social constructs around sex and gender.
But that's okay. First of all, that's just factually not true because most people who you're talking about are not gender abolitionists.
Yeah, that's fair.
They are absolutely not. They care a lot about gender stereotypes.
But that is the
that's
root
just factually wrong.
That is the root of queer theory based around gender.
I don't think it is.
That is the root of queer theory based around gender. Yes,
I mean,
is to abolish all those things. Yes.
There's a lot of people who call themselves gender abolitionists who clearly aren't. If you listen to what they're saying, I mean,
I understand that. I'm not talking about gender abolitionists. I'm saying that's the root of queer theory. If James Lindsay is correct,
but you're talking about gender abolitionism. You're saying that like we should demolish all of these things, right?
Yes.
That's gender abolitionism. They don't actually have that position.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's not my fault if they say they have a position and then they don't. So I don't know.
I mean, if you were a gender abolitionist, then you would be saying like we want to do away with the idea of men and women entirely. So there's no point in being trans because these things are not like categories that have any meaning.
Yes, but they could. Right, but they could pull a Vaush, which is that he has a workaround for this. I don't know if you've heard it before, which is that he agrees with what you said, but then he says, however, I think people transitioning will weaken the bonds of gender and thus create the net positive of enacting the gender abolition future faster.
I mean, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, that's his argument.
Completely wrong. I mean, that's so stupid.
It's a very bullshit position.
If you think that like basically expressing masculinity is so important that you're going to go through like a really difficult thing that's going to take a long time and is is going to be taxing on your life. That's saying that it's incredibly important that you express masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the only thing
Right,
it can
no,
possibly
I agree.
mean.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, then why would you do that?
Exactly.
Even if you felt as though you were in the wrong body, it wouldn't be particularly important because, I mean, if you don't see a meaningful distinction, then okay, I'm born in the wrong body, but so what? It's not that important anyway.
Yeah, but
it has to be really important to go through the whole process.
That's why none of the whole trans question is ruined. Like wokeness destroys itself on the trans question if they actually deconstruct it, because none of it makes any sense. And as you just pointed out, you can't be a gender abolitionist and then be in favor of people transitioning.
Yeah, I mean, you can be in favor of people doing it. You wouldn't think that it was as important.
Well, I think actually, and I think he didn't pull that out of his. I think he didn't just make that up. I do think there are. I think James Lindsay talked about this. There are queer theorists who make the same argument that say basically, if society is permissive of people being gender fluid to such an extent that they can literally use surgery or hormones to change their gender willy-nilly, that would basically, weaken the borders between male and female going forward in the future.
I mean, there's going to be some number of people who argue basically anything, but
Right.
the question is whether or not what you're saying is representative of, let's say, the dominant majority of the group.
I think there's some truth to that claim. If that were to be the norm, that would be true to some extent.
I don't know, sorry, what exactly? If what were to be the norm, what would be true?
If there was if everyone could just transition whenever they wanted, essentially, didn't need any medical diagnosis, and if it was like a widespread practice, would that lead to a future of gender abolition down the road?
All these false positives are going to help them perfect the gender reassignment surgery. That's for sure. Like all these people to experiment on.
I don't know. I think it would to some extent. Like if we had a future where anyone could walk into a Fallout 3 character creation booth and you could change your body to be whatever you want it to be, I feel like that would change gender. I feel like that would inherently lead to a gender abolitionist view of the world, because you would never know if you're talking to someone who was born a male or female, right?
Yeah, then Sitch, you could fix your 2 out of 10 charisma.
When you
just jack that sucker up.
Oh my god.
Listen, I'll put more points into charisma. You can put more points into intelligence. All right.
I don't want to, buddy. Yeah. Blissful ignorance, man. I don't want.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll give me that fucking red pill, dude, or whatever. The blue pill, the one that puts me back in the box. I'm down.
Can we finish? Let's finish the Vaush video. What do you guys think?
Okay, let's finish the Vaush video.
Interesting discussion. Thanks for bringing it up, Doomer. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.